They're gonna kill the love of my life.
David!
If I don't go back to what I was doing.
Our line of work is quite brutal and quite ruthless.
How far would you go for love?
You steal truck, bring it to me. Then you make your money.
Is it dangerous?
Of course it's dangerous!
Nicholas Hoult, Felicity Jones, with Ben Kingsley and Anthony Hopkins.
All this trouble, all this pain, for love.
Collide. Now playing. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13.
Blog
Good
Talk
morning.
Radio.
Good morning. It's a gorgeous Thursday in New York. And you have reached Venus Unplugged, your virtual heartbreak hotel. This is your host, Llorraine Neithardt. And if you have any questions, you want to do any emails, you want to set up appointments, whatever, you can go to LorraineNeithardt.com or call 212-757-8914. I always forget to do this, so I'm just putting it up front. So today, and probably for the next couple of months, we're going to be working on pretty much the 7 deadly sins, you know, that marvelous part, the real shadow, the real story. So today, and probably for the month of September, we're going to be working with Cinderella's teachings. This profound story, fairy tale. There's been over 700 interpretations of this fairy tale, so it's pretty big in our psyche. And for those who want to go a little deeper into this, as terrifying as it might be, to begin to understand the pathology of being envied and envying and what it's about, because it's a huge part of the shadow, but it can be transformed very slowly. So Cinderella, this fairy tale and other fairy tales that have to, well, all fairy tales have to do with evil on some level, because they're moral teachings. They give, you can read a fairy tale is like a dream that's lasted 1,000 years, okay? Because every time you reread the fairy tale, there's another little detail that hints at the possibilities of how you can get in and can get out of something. So certainly explore some of Marie von Franz's work on evil in fairy tales. I mean, because she is the genius, the Jungian genius on fairy tales and that interpretation. So my journey in consciousness around envy actually started in 1985 when I met my Jungian mentor. And she was second generation Jungian. And so I just started, I was curious about Jung. I was curious about all of this. Little did I know, it lasted 25 years, this exploration of psyche, and it continues. It lasted 25 years with my mentor, Francoise Richards, and still continues every day of my life. So what is it about Cinderella? See, one of the things with Cinderella, and we all can become a victim of envy by too much goodness. Provokes envy in other people. You know, that's just too bad for them, but, you know, you still need to be aware that, wow, okay, because that was one of Cinderella's. She's untried, she's virginal, she's like this pure space where she's just sitting there suffering and doing everything that everybody wants, but her gift, she's kind of a suffering servant, okay? She's kind of a female Christ who suffers, but not consciously. She's just whistling and cleaning, and the mops are dancing, and, you know, all those things are happening. But it's dangerous, because Cinderella is an unconscious state with her goodness. She doesn't understand its power. So she's just blissed out, right? And without being aware consciously, maturely, because that's part of what consciousness is. You know, consciousness is hopefully, that we're moving towards a state to be mature. That eventually we can become the elders of our world, our clan, our generation, whatever it might be. Okay, so Cinderella, she's not aware; she's just good for goodness sakes, and without the awareness of evil, she suffers, as we all do. We need to be able to differentiate. I'm always astounded when I'm working with a client and there's this horrific situation. And one of the most common questions that I ask is, did they mean it? Did they mean it? Well, okay, no, the first bullet they didn't mean. The second bullet they definitely meant. Because it just indicates that the pain is so great that the only way we can suffer this attack of envy is denial. No, they couldn't have possibly known that. Believe me, somebody's filled with envy, they know they're filled with envy. And if you're being attacked by envy, you need to know what it is. You cannot have pity and sentimentality towards it because it's dangerous. And when we are in the eyes of danger or being looked at with the eyes of danger, we need to know the intensity of what it is. Now, of course, this is terrifying. And I'm not expecting you to kind of embrace this. And that's why we have to do it through deflective light. We have to read it through fairy tales. We have to kind of come in and around and through like overcoming or chopping Medusa's head off. We cannot look at envy directly. We'll be frozen in stone. Our emotions will just freeze up. We freak. So this tale, as all fairy tales do, they indicate evil, indicates and provides us with opportunities to increase consciousness. I'm not saying happiness. I'm saying consciousness. You see, there's such a desire. I only want the good. I only want the good. I only want the good. Well, you're bringing in the shadow with only wanting the good. We want the shadow and the light. We want to be able to see the both of them. We want to be able to integrate them. We want to see. But when there's only the good, so if somebody is envious because of the wounding in their own hearts, okay, and they see another with the perceived goodness, you're going to get their envy. They're going to get their praise. So we need to look at this. And envy really, I just see it destroying so much talent and ability when a person is being, and today we're going to work on being envied. And then, I won't be here next week. I'm going to be up in Maine with the fabulous Wendy Ashley studying astronomy and mythological, all myths, where there's lots of envy. Okay, so envy can be a misunderstood compulsion to achieve something within oneself that has been neglected. It springs from a vague awareness or a deficiency in one's character, a deficiency that needs to be realized. It points to a lack which can be filled. The object of envy embodies what one might oneself have created or achieve, and therefore the fault can be remedied. Now, in the story of Cinderella and the sisters, I'm not sure that's so true for the sisters, because they're just completely unconscious enviers. And if people are deeply dedicated, it takes a lot of healthy ego or just pure dumbness, just being an absolute fool and walking into it. And then once you're in it, you're expressing it, then feeling it, you've got to start working with it. Okay. So the envier attacks its target. All right. So the sisters attack Cinderella, so that Cinderella need not deal with her own envying because it's projected onto the envied one, who could then be blamed for it. So it's like, Cinderella, it's your fault. Okay. The person who is filled with envy blames the other. And usually with no provocation. It just explodes from a person, all right? It can even happen with a stranger. Like a person will project onto you and have a whole storyline that has absolutely nothing to do with the truth of your being. So the envier, which is the assisters, that's why they attack Cinderella, because then they don't have to deal with, their ugliness, which all they have to do is look in the mirror and they can see it, which is interesting too. That kind of envy can't get away. I find it interesting very often with men, if they perceive the woman as beautiful, they cannot imagine that she's capable of envy. Now, the envy that a man will have towards a woman, which I see a lot too, is women do not understand that the man can envy. It's like envy. Why? He has this or he has that. But he can envy in the way that a man will envy is they'll spoil, they'll disconnect, they'll put it down. So they destroy everything, and then you feel like you're nothing. And then you have to ask the question, wait, did I just get hit with envy? What was that about? Why all of a sudden do I disappear? If you're disappearing, envy's in the room. Something has happened. Okay? See, the envy one feels trapped behind like almost a thick wall of glass. And she can see the person who's envying her, but she what she says can't get through the wall of projections. And the envier has thrown up a wall against her. And in this scenario, we all become targets, mere objects, which is what is so heart-wrenching about this. The envy becomes, you become like a garbage can for somebody's projections. And your feeling is, well, I don't exist. I'm nothing. I'm absolutely nothing. Like the evil eye, like Medusa glances and we're turned to stone. Now, what happens when we have these accounts of envy is just this awful feeling. We can literally get sick. We just have to go lie down, or we're really sick, or sometimes people are out partying and everything, and they get an encounter with envy. You don't necessarily have to know the person. You come home, you're sick. You think, oh, God, I drank too much. But, you could have gotten hit with envy, too. Right? Most of the time, this really intense envy happens between some type of relationship or bond. It's usually not the stranger that can hurt us as much. The stranger, you can just say, shoot yourself. But, to those we're dependent on, or those we think we're dependent on, it's pretty rough. Let's say in the case of, I see this happening, it's very, very hard. And we have to have compassion for all. When we can have compassion after we start understanding the pathology. Don't try with the compassion out of your unconsciousness. It's not going to work. You're just talking. You're just blowing wind on the air. It's not happening. When we begin to understand what the attack is about and slowly begin to get enough consciousness, which is always the answer, like, holy moly, I was really in a polluted dynamic there. Okay? So first we can just feel when one is being envied. We feel like we've just been a garbage can. They just puked all their stuff on you. Okay. And so any time you try to have sympathy or understanding, the one who envies you you don't even count. Even if you say you're sorry, even if you didn't do anything, they don't want to know about it. They just want to punish you. You're going to a cold part of hell without your eyeballs, okay? It's so devastating. So then the second stage, after one has been envied, slimed, okay, or the second outstanding mark of being envied, is this utter feeling of helplessness. Like, what just happened? Even if you can come out of the trance and state that, it's just a terrible, terrible feeling. And you're just left with this sense of just being impotent. And any attempt to be nice, be careful of that nice thing. That nice thing doesn't work. You don't be nice to envy. You can be indifferent, but not nice. So any attempt at being nice is met with further intensity. The envier really goes berserk because you're being nice. So you have to remember that the envier does not feel a connection to goodness. So you don't give an envious person more goodness. You're just adding, oil to the fire. You need to, step back and keep your mouth shut, okay, and start healing, okay? So that tremendous feeling of being just helpless. Then, okay, you may try to be nice. That sucks. That doesn't work. Then you might have anger. Okay, well, I'll go for the angry confrontations that are taken as justification. And so what will happen is the envier will just take it as justification for their grudges. How dare you? You have what you've done to me. It's like what you've done, in a sense, you didn't do anything because it is a situation where you are a victim. You're just a pawn in their scenario, but it is very real. So and efforts to understand the envy, it's like, oh, I understand or whatever. You can't even label it in front of a person. They'll kill you. It's taken as patronizing. Okay. And then if you try to show the pain caused by the envious attack, it's met by ungiving silence. So you're screwed. But your conscience is, okay, what happens, and this is what we do need to be careful of, because you can't avoid this. It's just part of human nature, and the more we start to bring consciousness gently and lovingly through reflection, sometimes if you have an encounter with envy, write a fairy tale, because the fairy tale will always tell us kind of the way to get in and get out, even though we think we don't know how to do it. Psyche knows how to do it, okay? So what can happen when you've been the victim of envy, or it's kind of it's a pathology in your life. It's like, why do you get envied? Somewhere you're disowning your own goodness. I mean, we don't have to flaunt it, but we do have to know. I mean, that's one of the hardest things in the world, is to be able to admit that you have talents and abilities, or just a beautiful smile that is enviable. Humbly, like, wow, yeah, I can see that provoking envy. Scares me to death, but I can see it. Gently, loving, because that's bringing more consciousness to you. That by saying, oh, no, I don't have anything for them to envy, you're asking for it, because they're already in that realm of envying. There's a card that I found many years ago, and I'm going to try to find it and post it. And it's the classic for the feeling of envy. There's a coffin, and a woman is lying in the coffin, and she's got a green dress with pink polka dots. And then two people are visiting, a male and a female, are visiting, her wake. And the woman has the same polka dot dress on. And what's the caption? The woman who is alive is saying to the woman who's dead, because she has the same dress on, that bitch. That's the logic of envy. Now we laugh, but it's terrifying. You're dead, you're wearing the same dress, and you're still being envied. And that's how unconscious and deep envy is. Now, you may get the brilliant idea, well, if there's envy in the world, I'm just not going to be dependent on anyone. I'm just going to learn to do everything myself. I'm not going near anybody, blah, blah, blah. And which is a great idea for a little while, but it doesn't work. Because at one point, you are going to need somebody, or at one point you become so unbelievably lonely at your independence. And you're also not making connections to people who are not envious. Everybody is envious, okay? So Cinderella's sisters scorn all her efforts to reach her. No matter how much she washes and cleans and does and everything, it only activates their malice. Then there's the old trick of, I know, I'm going to be really generous. Very often, just notice people that you're over-generous with or inappropriately generous with. You got to be careful with that stuff, because generosity can arouse ingratitude and hateful resentment, because the lavish giving seems to demonstrate the giver's superiority. Now, that's not your motivation. Or your motivation can be that secretly, unconsciously, you smell the envy, and it's like, here, take this, just, go away. But the person who's filled with envy just says, oh, my God, if you gave me this, can you imagine what they have hidden? Because they don't have that connection to goodness. That's why they're suffering. And you can't, if you're being attacked by envy, it's not your job to understand the envier. That's going to result in a greater living nightmare than the one that you're facing, okay? So, for example, because what envy does is, rather than wanting to receive goodness, envy wants to destroy the giver. So just remember that, okay? Be still. We're told, observe, okay? So Cinderella, for example, she owns nothing. What the hell does Cinderella ever do? But her work and the attitude with which she approaches it. But it's the attitude which she approaches her work and life. If you can imagine, that provokes envy. So amazing, but it's true. But her sisters envy her for that. Owning much but doing nothing, the sisters. But doing nothing, they envy her way of being and going about things. So whistling while you work sometimes can get you in trouble. But you should still do it anyway. Just be aware, because people who are envious, that's why there are times, like in the Middle East, when a child is born very, very beautiful, they will give it some strange name, like ugly face or cactus puss or something, right? Because they don't want they know the child is so beautiful, they don't want the envy to come at the child. So this is ancient, and it's in every culture. Every culture has its laws and studies for against envy. That's what psychic protection is. What do you think you're protecting yourself from? The evil eye, ill wishes. So what the sisters want to do to Cinderella is push on their own disfiguring envy. Okay. And so the person who is looked at with envy's intensity must beware. The blast of envy brings many aftershocks, any one of which can blow you away. Pain is the first shock that envy wounds. Then the envied one can fall into a pool of victimization, of undeserved hurt. Or you may, one may struggle with the pain by accusing oneself, making oneself the cause, taking responsibility for others' projection, and denying the benevolence of the envying. Denying the benevolence of the envying. Oh, I shouldn't have wore that dress, or maybe I shouldn't have said that, or, okay, I won't get my PhD because, after all, nobody else in my family has it. That crap. It's nonsense. You being less does not resolve envy. Never will. So sometimes we just have to take an attitude of, eat your heart out, I can have it, there's nothing I can do. If you want to be envious, go be envious, but not with me, okay? So what happens is when we then try to take the envying ourselves, all right, that's not going to work. you're not going to be able to fulfill your destiny. You're disconnecting from your rightful relationship with the goodness. And nobody learns anything. So we're all a day late and a dollar short and nothing happens. Okay? Then what can happen is or we can get really freaked, okay, and arrogant. And this one's a really uber stupid move. Don't even think of this one, okay? But some people do it. Some people get tempted to retaliate and persecute in kind, and that they're hoping to expose to everyone how cold and unethical and grasping the envy is. But this way, the envied one becomes backbiting and malicious gossip. Remember, Cinderella doesn't say a word. She gets help from invisible forces, which is a greater connection to the good and the instincts and the nature world and the pumpkins and the rats and the shoes. Don't forget the shoes, okay? So sometimes with the envy, you can feel guilty for being alive because her very existence provokes such unhappy envy in others. That needs to be faced. It's not your fault. It's a learning tool. It's a big piece of shadow work that goes on and on and on. Okay, so it's once we start looking at this, we can see it, and eventually it's like anything else. We build the strength to see it, to name it, to disengage, to learn how to do it, not run and freak. Okay. So, but sometimes we want to withdraw, and you want to hide, and not tangle with such viciousness. And very often, this quitting of the field excites more attack from the envier. The envier wants to keep the pleasure and the pain of this dynamic. So there are times you just can't win. You just gotta see it for what it is through reflection. So very often the envier, the sisters, cannot tolerate simple withdrawal. See, because the odd thing about withdrawal is the envied one's attempt to become entirely self-sufficient, to deny normal dependencies and needs for relationship, especially to potential envious. But this only works for a little while. And most of the time, envy is within close relationships. So what happens is the withdrawal, and okay, I'm not going to deal with them. I'm going to live in my own little world. I'm going to, move to Zimbabwe or wherever you want to go. So this can sometimes result in a remarkable development of talents and splendid independence, but it won't last. Because you got to face it. That's what we're here for. That's what makes us wise. These, Venus Unplugged and the virtual heartbreak is becoming the wise wound. These are teachings. So if we withdraw, and yes, we may develop fantastic talents ourselves, but eventually chronic loneliness will develop. And actually, all this maneuvering to avoid envy only attracts more of it. And very often, the envied one is a source of help and friendly interest or active support for the envied. Goodness is very powerful and must be administrated wisely. So here, I've got to bounce in 90 seconds, okay? Okay, so if you wake up in the morning and you're really in a rotten mood, the first thing you ask yourself, did you get hit with envy in the last 24 hours? Because the pathology goes envy, rage, spoil. You'll wake up in a bad mood, and if you say, that person looked at me kind of weird, or whatever the encounter is, you'll understand that if you don't catch the envy and name it, you will be angry all day, and you will do something against yourself. You'll spoil it for yourself. So I'm not here next week, so that's going to give you a lot to think about. And be aware because this can turn to gold. Sometimes you don't even know how talented and beautiful you are. Envy knows. So sometimes it's a powerful, powerful teaching. It's terrifying, but it's powerful, as all great teachings are. Au revoir.
They're gonna kill the love of my life. If I don't go back to what I was doing.
Our line of work is quite brutal and quite ruthless.
How far would you go for love?
You steal truck, bring it to me. Then you make your money.
Is it dangerous?
Of course it's dangerous.
Nicholas Hoult, Felicity Jones, with Ben Kingsley and Anthony Hopkins.
All this trouble, all this pain, for love.
Collide. Now playing. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13. Collide. Now playing. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13. Collide. Now playing.